Hi everyone and welcome to Safe and Sound, a limited edition series from the print on living with COVID-19 presented by Facebook. This is our 8th episode and today we talk about women's healthcare in a world that is still battling the pandemic. Our two guests today will help us understand the issue better. Let's introduce them without further ado. Lalita Kumaramangalam is director at the India Foundation and somebody who has worked closely on health, especially HIV/AIDS. Welcome, Ms. Kumaramangalam. Our second guest today is Poonam Muthreja, Executive Director, Population Foundation of India, an organization that works extensively on women's healthcare, partnering the Government of India in several programs. Welcome, Ms. Muthreja. Ms. Kumaramangalam, if we could start with you. In exactly 2 days, India will be completing a full year of living with COVID-19. That was the first case in Kerala. What would you say has been the most lasting impact of the pandemic on women's health?
Well, I'd say negative. If you want it in one word, negative. Because in every way, whether it's been physically or socially or economically or even in sexually, she has been at the receiving end of the epidemic. Women who have been abused in various ways, like I said, all the things that I mentioned, economically, financially, etc., and physically, have faced the rough end of the stick in the last 1 year. Women have also been, I think, disproportionately affected by the epidemic as caretakers, because you will see that the majority of people who provide care, nursing assistants, nurses, doctors, etc., you will find they are women. The vast majority are women. And they have had to struggle with infection and falling sick. They have had to struggle often even with things as, as simple and mundane as ill-fitting suits, because, all these suits are made to one size. And the size that's normally given throughout the world is the average male size, not the women's. So gloves are too big. The suits are sometimes too big. They've had to deal with an enormous amount of physical hardship, not just when they get their periods every month and stuff, but, throughout the epidemic. And also the fact that they have often, I think, received the least care. One takes it for granted that, a working woman can manage and juggle her home. And most of us do manage to. But during COVID times, her backup is totally gone. All of us who go to work depend on our maids, etc. I mean, you and me and Poonam would understand this very well. And what happened to these women who've had no choice, those who go to work and those who stay at home? They've had to be forced to look after children who could have been at school. They've had to be forced to look after husbands who could have been at work. And even if the husbands are extremely good men who are not violent, etc., they've had the burden of, as I said, the burden of work, the burden of everything has been put on them. And the fact that more women have lost jobs than men, actually, in statistics, I'm sure Poonam will give you all those statistics, but the fact that more women have actually lost jobs, especially because we have more women in the informal sector, and it's the informal sector that's taken the biggest hit. They have lost so much of their autonomy in the last 1 year. Financially, they have been almost, to use the word finished almost sounds very fatalistic, but it's true. Financially, they have been almost butchered, because these are daily wage earners. Where do they go? And then also added to this is the fact that there is expected to be, I think it's probably started already occurring, what you can call pandemic babies. Women and men have been close together for, sort of not closeted, but put together with very little else to do. And there's a huge amount of pregnancies that have happened. I got a call the other day from a journalist in Tamil Nadu asking me about the cradle baby scheme. I told you this, that Jayalalitha had mentored and done a very good job of. And she was saying, what do? We need it, because there are so many girl childs who are now, reports are coming out that they are being again abandoned on the road. And, because reproductive health services were withdrawn almost. Naturally, everything, the whole effort and the whole push was on COVID, treating COVID, not this. And this is something that nobody likes to talk about in India even today, that babies are not born when stocks bring them. They're born when men and women cohabitate and, we produce children. And the bias against babies in India, everybody knows. So all said and done, women have borne a very disproportionate effect, part of the ills or the unfortunate outcomes of the COVID pandemic in India and abroad. But if you're talking specific, it's no different in India from anywhere else in the world.
Mhm. Uh, One other way of looking at it is, health in general, non-COVID health has suffered.
Yes.
Our TB reporting is down, surgeries are down, Ayushman Bharat uptake is down. Um, how are we then saying that women's health is sort of worse affected than others? Ms. Mutrija, if I can take that to you.
Yeah, so if you look at the public health system, for instance, it is women, because women need reproductive sexual health care through the year, it is women who are using the health system much more than the men. Um, uh, One, Lalita mentioned in uh, the record number of pregnancies we are going to see in this period, which is for India, 2 million additional births will take
Mm.
place because women did not have access to family planning services. Women did not have access to abortion services. Women, it is
Yes.
unfortunate for women that they are the ones who have give birth to the babies, and it is, while it is not ill health being pregnant, but we all know it's full of complexities that can happen through the pregnancy. And for
Mm.
the unwanted pregnancy, abortion in India, we had, even the government data shows, we've had 16 million abortions every year. Can you imagine 16 million women primarily not having access to abortion? Then childbirth. It is the privilege both and a burden for women. And the fact that women could not give birth in institutions in large parts of India, including Delhi. We heard this horrendous story, not story, reality of this woman who in Delhi went to 14 hospitals and ultimately had a stillborn child. We heard of women dying in childbirth. We heard of women walking and giving birth after walking for about 100 kilometers. A woman gave birth on a roadside to a baby and she continued to walk. Now, women are very resilient, but they do need these services. Third, just adding on to the very comprehensive picture we got from Lalita, in terms of violence, women were um, uh, locked into homes with their perpetrators who were very frustrated, having lost their jobs, not being able to go out, not having access to alcohol in some cases, which is, a double whammy for women. Whether they drink or not drink, it's equal, it leads to violence against women. So the pandemic that already existed of women experiencing violence in India, and as Lalita said, across the world, completely got exacerbated. So women's mental health is something that, with the burden of caregivers, as caregivers their work increased, as caretakers their work increased, in every which way, women went through psychological, mental, physical pressure. And look at in terms of the even jobs that Lalita mentioned, women lost. Men have made up almost 70%, so especially informal sector and domestic work. 70% of the men have got back their jobs while women haven't. And women are not likely to. And I want to go further and talk about the impact on girls, not just women. We are facing child marriage across India because in any, not just epidemic, disaster, we know from historical figures that and that girls get married, are given to child marriage increases and girls get married early. And one way of families dealing with the burden of having children and not being able to afford food and other commodities, the first victim is the girl child who gets married. Second, girls who, even those who are in school, have not had access have had very little access, should I say, to be fair, to technology, whether it is as simple as a cell phone or computers. If there is technology available in the household, it's the men who use it. It is the boy child who's given. The girl child is rarely given access to technology and services which are required for them to remain in school. So there's also, in addition, a huge dropout of girls, which we are seeing, and we will continue to see girls dropping out of school or being made to drop out of school. And girls who were accessing sanitary pads from schools. As you know, there is a program for free distribution of sanitary pads for girls. The sanitary pads disappearing for the girls who got used to using and who need them. Can you imagine their menstrual hygiene being impacted so badly that these girls in Bihar, a small group of adolescent girls, started a bank. They all put in 1 rupee each to begin with, 100 girls, and they started a sanitary pad bank out of desperation. Very innovative. But there are so many things like this which we don't even think about. And finally, as Lalita said, the reproductive, we were focusing on COVID, and who was focusing at the village level on COVID? It is the 3.3 million frontline health workers who took the burden and who also took the risks. They did not have, PPEs, they did, the Ashas and Anganwadi workers and ANMs didn't even have, to begin with, gloves, PPEs, or any such access. They were risking their lives, and the communities were actually, we have a lot of information on Ashas being pushed out of the houses when they go to do their surveys, etc., or to advise families on how to do social distancing and all the other COVID-related precautions. And what was really tragic, and I do want to say here, women not only lost jobs, but look at the way we look at women and in terms of economic support. The Ashas, who were given the entire burden of surveillance, treatment, referrals, and so on, got additional 1,000 rupees per month. But addition to what? Earlier, they were working on incentives, taking women for family planning services, they would get incentives, or if they took women for institutional births. So all they were earning is 1,000 rupees. Is that how we treat our women? And now that we have recognized that the foundation of the public health system at the village level is Ashas, my question is, what are we going to do for them? How are we going to not only compensate them economically, but how are we going to strengthen their capacity to work with communities even more?
So these are actually some of some very structural healthcare issues that you're raising, which is probably sort of, we'll need to talk about it in a different conversation. But one number that I would like to put in perspective is that India is expecting 2 million more babies because of the pandemic lockdown, which is 7% of our birth cohort. That's 26 million is our birth cohort. I just quickly did a calculation. That's 7% more babies. And we're not.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot. We're not in a position really. But Ms. Kumaramangalam, why do you mention RCH having been ignored? We've traditionally never paid too much attention to women's mental health in any case.
Yes.
But how do you see this affecting mental health? This obviously has a very, very deep impact on mental health. How do you see that impacting? And
Abantika, we have not paid attention to mental health, full stop. Whether it's women, men, children, doesn't make a difference. We don't talk about mental health. In India, if you say you're going to a counselor, forget psychiatrist, you're pagal. मतलब वो तो पागल है. In Hindi, I'm saying it. In every Indian language, it's said that one's mad. Other paityon, they'll say in Tamil, exactly. And so people don't even know that mental health is actually a health problem. not just a social problem, or not just, somebody behaving a little crazily now and then. We have people who have serious mental health problems, not just depression, etc. Depression itself can be very, very serious. You have people who have dual personality problems. They don't go to mental health. They don't understand that there are medicines that can help you get better. But I would say that the COVID epidemic has been both a blessing and a disguise, both a blessing in disguise and a curse, because the amount of strain that women have been put under, as Poonam said, we are very resilient, but there is a limit to resilience. Many women have, broken under the pressure that they've been on, that they've been facing in the epidemic. But also, you will find that women have enormous reserves of strength and inner strength, and again, that word resilience, because many women have faced extra violence because they've tried to protect their own children. And as you know, women will do anything to protect their children. So whether it's in terms of the fact that they got less food, or less reproductive and sexual health care, or just any sort of respite from the drudgery of what they have been of the work that has been added to their daily work or routine work because of the epidemic, and because everybody was locked up at home, and she had to manage with much less resources, and she has lost much of her economic independence. A person told me that a worker from one of our Indian things, he had a son. They have children who work in the Middle East. He told me that his wife produced 5 lakhs that she had saved. Many women have a habit of saving small amounts that they hide from the rest of the family. And he said that fellow who is not, I wouldn't call him women unfriendly, but I wouldn't call him exactly a great empowerer of women. He told us honestly, he said, Meri biwi ne hum sabko bacha liya. So I was so shocked. I said, huh? And he said, yes, she produced 5 lakhs. And I looked at him and said, you're exaggerating. He said, nahi madam, 20 saal ka ye usne chupchap rakha tha. And only today I accept that she was right and she did it. So women have also understood that they're in some ways.
Demonetization, ma'am.
No. Come on. This is a poor woman. This man is a poor man. Most women put away money because they're afraid their husbands will take it for booze or for whatever it is, And sometimes they're lucky enough to be able to keep it safe. But coming back to mental health, I think women are not even expected to have mental health problems. We're just expected to cope. So women too have internalized that opinion. As I say, patriarchy is not just the domain of men. Enough women have also bought into that narrative. And once a colleague of mine, a senior doctor in SRMC, Sri Ramchandra Medical College in Chennai, told me that we need 5 lakh mental health professionals in India and we have less than 10,000. Yeah. So the fact that we don't even have that sort of trained professional available, and he said this is just doctors, man. If you're talking about counselors, if you're talking about mental health, other professionals, he said that will go into much more than this. That will be at least 3 to 4 times this. He said, given a population today, I think we're hitting almost 1.3738 billion. Right. Given the problems that poverty and many other things, ill health, many other things, modern life also puts on us, India needs health professionals. We are not investing in mental health. And I'm afraid one of these days we are going to face the fruits of our neglect. They'll be very bitter, but what to do? Many of us, women are not even taught to talk about them, like what Poonam was saying, about their periods and stuff. Actually, Abantika, how many of us today actually talk openly about our periods? The little girls who started that bank, hats off to them. That's, I suppose one would say, Indian jugaad and pass it off. But the fact is that at least now youngsters are thinking, talking to themselves. Otherwise, girls wouldn't even talk to each other about such things. Right. So mental health is, a poor mental health is not an outcome of problems that came due to COVID. Women are under pressure anyway all the time, and sexual and reproductive health is not given enough unless you're pregnant. It's not really even given any importance even today, mostly in this country. It has changed. It's changed in the last 10, 15, 20 years, but we still have a very long way to go. So women mentally are always under pressure, and COVID had added to it in such a huge, disproportionate way. given the fact that also, where could you go? You're stuck at home. Which mental health professional would you actually talk to?
Right.
How many women who need help have access to things like the internet?
Mhm.
And who can talk on Zoom or WhatsApp video call or whatever it is? How many of them actually know? How many doctors in rural areas have access to that sort of
Right.
offering that they can give, that they can offer such services?
Mhm.
And also insurance for mental health is very poor.
Right.
So it's a sort of cascading effect that is there. And COVID has literally sought out the weak points of society and every human being. The pressure points which are weak, it sort of found that out and has put unbearably more pressure, exerted more pressure on those points, often to breaking point, unfortunately.
But there's also this theory that just because the whole family is together, there's less sort of mental health issues. Does that not apply for women in some ways, at least, Ms. Mutreja?
Well, that is a very middle class elite, if I may say, situation where families didn't get time to spend with each other because, especially if both the couples were working, but the man was very busy, and there was socializing, there was so many other, holidaying and so on. Here, families came, especially for those middle class families where women and men both work and had very hectic travel and other schedules. This captures their reality, not the reality of the majority of the poor. And not and when you losing jobs, when a large number of immigrants are walking back home, losing their jobs in cities, even though if I may say so, on the very first day when the lockdown happened, the Prime Minister did ask people to pay wages to their domestic staff and other staff, but people didn't through the lockdown. It also reflects the fact that women were given the entire burden in not just middle class homes, but in poor homes, but across the country, because there are
Yes.
helplines. And if you speak to, there's a new helpline that came up, Let's Talk. Most of the phone calls were during emergency that women called, and they were having the most difficult time, whether it was women health workers and other workers. So while there were some advantages for the middle class who was very busy, hectic social and other lives, professional lives, they got to spend some time with each other. But look at how it impacted the women. We, even in this family coming together, we haven't looked at the externality, which is how, as Lalita mentioned, women had to take care of the kids at home. Their schooling from online schooling again was the burden of the women. The cooking increase, you couldn't order out, you couldn't, again, for the middle class. But I would like to say that if we really looked at the research, which many NGOs have done, on the reality of poor families or underprivileged across the country, it is a story of nothing but exacerbation of the existing inequalities women experience, or the lack of access to reproductive sexual health services that women experience. These were not COVID created, they were COVID exacerbated.
Yeah.
And I would like to say that this is an opportunity for us in India and across the world to see how pandemics not only impact women differently. Do you know that Zika, post-Zika and other Ebola, only 1% of the research was gendered, that looked at the impact on
women.
Diseases on women. We must accept today, as we are accepting in this program and change the reality for a large number of women and try and understand how it, we while it is, we welcome stories of families coming together or heroism showed or innovations across the country that we saw in civil society, in governance, and in the corporate sector. We must continue to work together, but at the same time look at the gender impact realistically. Because if we don't do that, especially for a large majority of the women, we not only are going to have huge burdens to deal with, and in fact catastrophe, as Lalita said, on mental health. We are in fact just focusing for a minute on mental health. According to the Lancet, already 1/4 of the suicides across the world are young people from India, and girls are overtaking boys. Now, suicide rates have increased across the world. In fact, here in America, many states have decided to open up their schools because of the high levels of suicide. This does impact girls differentially, but girls have always we've seen over the last years an increase in suicides as far as girls are concerned. And as far as mental health goes, we have a huge deficit, as Lalita said, in investing. And while we may not be able to get 5 lakh doctors or psychiatrists, but we can train. There are alternatives. We can train professionals to do counseling. What did this Let's Talk helpline, they announced the helpline a week after the pandemic and asked mental health professionals, which includes counselors across the country, to volunteer 2 hours each of their time. And they have heard from millions. Fortunately, one positive side of the situation as a result of COVID is we've realized how much we can do online. Whether it is counseling, healthcare, so webinars. We don't have to go for a 1-hour meeting and leave a carbon footprint to another city or to another country. We can do it from our homes or our offices. So similarly, there is a lot of work that can be done online on counseling.
True.
And training. We are training ASHAs, as are many other programs, government-run programs, a program we do for the government. We're training village health sanitation committees, ASHAs, and various frontline health workers online. And believe me, it's working. Yes, it's much better to do training in person, but for the women, actually, to travel long distances to do training, it's so much easier because, they have curbs on their mobility. Plus, who is going to look after the child? I mean, we are not a country where there is equal, or in the world, there is no place where men are taking responsibility for the children. And given that, it works for women to go through training online. And, as long as we create the facilities, which I believe at this point, at least where government programming is concerned, or government dealing with frontline health workers in the remote areas, there is technology, fortunately, which is being strengthened. And we need to focus a lot more on ensuring that frontline health workers have information for referrals on mental health and violence against women. This is an opportunity also which creates huge mental health issues for women. Even the fear of violence, not only experiencing violence, and the impact it has on the younger children. So we have to look at it as a public health issue, because the only contact people in the community in the remote areas have is with the frontline health workers. So they have a critical role. So we have to reimagine India's health system for not only mental health and others. And as far as the middle class and the elite goes, I'm afraid their situation is going to become normal very quickly, and
Yeah.
some of the positives of the learnings from COVID, I hope will be imbibed, which is consuming less, spending more time with the family, and so on and so forth, cooking together. What is this a great
Really.
discovery that India has made, the Indian middle class has made? Well, the middle class across the developed world has been cooking together for some time. And I'm really glad we are going to cook together. And I want every man to participate in cooking.
So, every man to participate in cooking may be a little too ambitious, but I like that line about, we need to reimagine our health system, and that I think
Yes.
has been applicable for years now. It's not just about COVID. Ms. Kumaramangalam, what your thoughts on, going forward? How do we recover lost ground? What do we need to do to sort of, get women healthcare, RCH services back at least where they were, or are they already back?
No, I don't think they're already back, but they seem to be on stream to coming back slowly. Reproductive health services may come back sooner than sexual health services. India is not a country that is very keen to.
Between the two.
They're very different. They could be very different. Like I said, if you're pregnant, that's reproductive health. That's not sexual health. We'd like to think it has nothing to do with each other also, but the reality is quite different. And sexual health also, for example, I think today we are able to talk openly about girls' periods, girls themselves. The Swachh Bharat and many other programs that have given young girls the autonomy to go to school and to ask for a separate toilet, and to you say that yes, we want to use pads, and that they can save they have the initiative to save their own money to buy it, etc. That is reproductive health. In a way, it is sexual health, but it's not. Sexual health is quite different. It's about when they're forced to, they can't have access to many
Contraceptive.
not just contraceptives, also women have and I've seen this during both HIV and all STDs. If you see, they bear the again the disproportionate brunt of any sort of infection, because they don't have access also to sexual health, okay, condom usage, which becomes contraception, but also medicines. So we need to look at women's health as not being just an extension of general health, but more as an extension of public health, as Poonam pointed out. Also understand that when women's health is affected, their productivity is impaired, whether it's at home or in office. And it's a massive hit to the Indian economy. We've never calculated it. Gendered data on reproductive and sexual health and women's productivity at home and outside of home, in offices, etc., factories, wherever, I don't think it's available at all. We need to look also at data that is coming out, not only of the epidemic, because finally, I think the epidemic has proved that women as workers are extremely important, and that their contribution to the economy is as much, in many ways, if not more. The burden of agriculture, for example, falls on women. Most agricultural workers today are women throughout the country. And slowly but surely, this epidemic has shown that women need to be addressed as, as a unit themselves, not just merely as an extension of the family. The difference between sexual and reproductive health is also that reproductive health is often considered part of the family, etc. But family health services, let me put it that way. But sexual health for women is something totally different. So not only the service provision and the structure of service provision we need to look at again, which again depends almost solely on women in the rural and the hinterland areas, but also on the fact that women's productivity is a huge a huge contributor to the national economy. We need to start thinking of looking at much more gender data. As Poonam pointed out, you hardly have gender data in India at all. And it's not just India again. Many, many countries in the world don't have very much in gender data. And mental health does affect productivity. Downtime due to mental health, if you look at it, runs into billions of dollars globally. I'm sure it runs into billions of rupees in India. It's just that we don't have that sort of data, especially gender data. Housework even today is not considered work at all. It's never compensated for. And just imagine when a mother, the woman of the house falls sick and is sort of not unable to meet her thing, the home goes into a total, mess. It's confusion. And look at the cascading effect it has on productivity of the people of that household. So these are things that we also need to now bring up, because this is a point where today we understand, and finally the world, and India too, in this case more specifically, have understood the contribution that women make to health, women make to the economy, women make to life itself. And it's not just about giving birth again. So I think this is strike when the iron is hot. This is an opportunity that the government, that NGOs, that corporates, everybody, as Poonam put it rightly, the partnership, when we look at social health, when we look at social advancement, when we look at the country's advancement, if you want to become a 50 trillion or 25 trillion or whatever dollar economy, we must address the needs of women, which includes reproductive, sexual health, mental health, all health of women, including financial, economic, etc. And now programs must factor in the gender, whether you call it the work that needs to be done towards making gender not, I wouldn't say neutral, I would actually say gender positive. Gender neutral is no longer enough, I think. We need to really make allowances for the lack of gender neutrality, which means you have to be gender positive in all programs across the board. People may think I'm overreacting and overstating, but believe me, I'm not. And I hope, that upcoming budgets do look at gender as a separate part of what is the work that needs to be done in development.
A little bit of overreaction perhaps is justified to make up for years of underreaction. Yeah. But so the takeaways that we have really is that, the COVID-19 breakdown should be a sort of a chance to rebuild and rebuild
Yes.
better, a gendered look at things,
Yes.
as you put it very nicely, a gender positive instead of gender neutral way of looking at things, and looking at women's contribution, and sort of factoring that in when you're planning your even everything, including your economy, your health services, all of that.
Yes.
So that was a very interesting discussion, and thank you so much for joining in.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for waking up early for us. And
Yeah,
and
it must be really early there.
yeah. And Ms. Kumaramangalam, thank you so much for saying yes.
You're welcome.
Late, but thank you.
No, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abandika. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.